life I've barely spoken. Your words have been so broken. I've been under your hypnosis until you see no motion. On your knees, show your devotion. My skin is black but open. Are you with me now? Said, are you with me now? But still I just look around. Are you with me now? Are you with me now? Are you with me now? Said, are you with me now? Ain't felt this good in a while. They want us to simmer down. Can you hear me now? Am I going in and out? I stop and just look around to see if you're with me now. Tell me, are you with me now? Ready to put it down.
It's like that, ladies and gentlemen.
They won't forgive me now. You really ain't ready now. You haters just in the crowd, but still I just look around. Are you with me now? Are you with me now?
Just kill after kill for wings. It's insanely hard, and Fnatic they just don't know what to do and how to deal with this kind of play stuff.
Team Liquid, they are on the ropes right now. Now is the time to ride with a BKB. That's it, that's game.
We're about to do this at the biggest stage in Philippine Esports history. Make some noise for the Beijing Arena.
One v one in the tree line. Who's going to come out on top with the right leg? They'll get it! Double kill for the Potato Man!
Highlight is going to be duped up, but everything's all set up for Puppy to come in for the Echo Slam, and they're just planning to wipe E home if possible. There it is. You can't stop Secret. It'll end on a good old 3-2-2 for game number 1.
They're going back on DJ. Is he going to get it? He's going to try and find it. Oh! Rampage for the PL.
The big black hole! Ball from Corn with the stun follow-up! They've got him! Secret! You are getting wiped from this one! The Gosh will fly forward and Ramsey's afterlife! He goes to the back for the BKBs! Instantly trigger Ramsey's towards the black hole! Back up! The black hole! Down! A huge steal! The follow-up stun! They're gonna lose everything! The Ravage from Universe tries to scrape off mate! They're throwing out the ulti! Did Secret! Maybe they've got this! But no! Here comes the Musket!
He's found two. He's found three. For
See, no one can kill me in this game. I'm just shooting everyone out of the block. Let's see, there's a sniper here. It's so easy. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we are... Oh wait, we're actually live. I didn't realize it now. Okay, hello everyone and welcome to Gold Diggers! A show where we discuss stories of leadership and motivation, with sports serving as a metaphor dedicated to daily grinders, corporate athletes, and go-getters. And as you can see, I'm flexing my latest PlayStation 5. Actually, I'm just kidding. Like everyone else, I'm desperate and eager to get that PlayStation 5. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are live! So if you have any comments or questions for our guests, feel free to jot them down. I'm your host, Carlos Pineda, your resident box-to-box midfielder or point forward transitioning from esports to football, and vice versa. In the previous episode, we had Mary Joy Tabal, an Olympic marathoner who taught us how to keep ourselves motivated, which requires us to establish our goals, developing good habits, and keeping our pace going. And I wouldn't be able to appreciate her journey where she traversed multiple terrains from the mountains of her province all the way to Boston and Rio. If it weren't for my fellow gold diggers, let's welcome all of them, Simone, Relly, and Robbie.
Hi teammates, Simone here. Another special episode today with two guests involved in the esports industry. So let's find out more about how the industry is like and what we can learn from it. What else do you think our teammates can expect from tonight's episode, Rels?
Well, I'm very excited, Sim, for this one. But hey, again, welcome to another episode of the Gold Diggers. Hope you guys are doing well on this Saturday night. And again, our prayers to the victims of the typhoon last week. Please do stick around. This is a special episode right here, and I must say this is the wave of the future for Philippine sports. So you are what I miss this, right, Rob?
That's right, Rels. Thanks very much. And so teammates, we're very excited to get into a conversation with kindred spirits, passionate esports pioneers, Ren Vitug and Ralph Aligada in this special episode. So please stay tuned and find out more. Carlos?
It's a pleasure to have my fellow gold diggers in this show. All right, now let's proceed to our main event, introducing our guests. First is a man who never thought of making his mark in the esports or gaming scene. Yet when the opportunity came, he decided to venture deep. He is a mentor, known for guiding esports talents, teaching them the proper etiquette as well as the skills needed to survive. A sower of seeds, as seen when he further enhanced the growth of esports in mainstream media, which was evident in his tenure in TV5, introducing new programs and additional avenues for revenue growth. A bridge builder, which he showcased in Goliath Concept Studio, acquiring various clients and helping the Philippine Esports Organization, or the PESO, gain Philippine Olympic Committee accreditation as an associate member. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Ralph Aligada.
Hey guys, good evening. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Would you actually share your messages to our audiences here?
Sure. Well, quick shout-outs kasi mapagalitan ako ng team ko. Hindi ko gawin. Hi to everyone from Goliath Concepts. Hi to friends and family watching at the moment.
Yep, indeed. A huge shout-out for the members of Goliath Concepts Studio. I mean, they are without a doubt one of the best events organizers as well as the production members for the side of esports. I mean, I really appreciate their work. Like, they're the ones responsible for helping the nationals grow. But he is not our only guest in the show, as we've incorporated his colleague in the industry. This man, on the other hand, has always dedicated his life to esports and gaming, where he spent late nights catching up on the latest events in the Dota scene, as evident with the articles he has written for Gosu Gamers, a notable website for esports news. And that commitment carried on as he took a leadership role when he became the commissioner of the Nationals and an internal affairs head of the Philippine Esports Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Ren Vitug.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here, Carlos, and team.
Yeah, so Ren, would you like to greet the audience and share some thoughts about the show?
Yeah, no one specifically, but I'm very excited. I think there's a very interesting discussion to be made today. And based on what I watched, I think I should also be worried about the crunch time question. So I have to ask you to be kind to us there.
Yeah, I mean, crunch
Right.
time is AKA my torture device for all my audiences. No, just kidding. I don't want to scare you guys. All right. So, okay. Yeah, you did mention that this is going to be like an interesting or exciting discussion. And it's understandable because we're going to be talking about esports. Now, esports has a lot of misconceptions. Like, even the name itself has a misconception. Like, how do you spell esports? Is it with a small e, capital S? Is it with a dash? All of these like mumbo jumbos, and then some would argue that esports is like e-games, which is like not true. So give us your thoughts or your definition. Ren and Ralph, what is esports? Ralph, how about you start?
Well, whenever I'm asked to define what esports is, I go by a very specific definition, and it's that esports is competitive video gaming in a tournament format. Not all video games are esports. However, all esports, would involve video games. As an example, Candy Crush is a video game, but there's no esports there because you can't really put it in a tournament format, right? However, other games where you can do head-to-head versus a player or a team, all of those, like as examples, Dota 2, Mobile Legends, League of Legends, all of those can be done in a tournament format. So yeah.
All right, Ren, your turn.
Yeah, very similarly. I think competitive video gaming is the key phrase. I get how there can be thin lines, but I think it's very similar to for example games and sports. If the sports are not hundreds of years old, it would have been very confusing. I think up to now, by the definition of sports, many would argue that they are also sports. But the idea, I think, between them is the same. So it's a competition with multiple parties that compete with and against one another and each other. Yeah, that's about it for esports.
Yeah, yep, indeed. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The definition of esports, like there's some form of competition. It's not just about the fun in the games. It's not just about grinding your way. You have to make sure that it has to make an impact. And for those of you watching, remember when you're going to spell esports, don't remove the dash and make sure do not spell it with a small e capital S. Like it should be a small e or a small s or a capital E small letter S. So you've been involved with the industry. I mean, I've seen how you've progressed so far in your career. So you might as well give us a glimpse or how the history of esports occurred here in the Philippines. How did it grow here, and when did the industry accelerate? Let's start with you, Ren.
Well, it's hard to pick a date, but the growth spurt definitely happened with the boom of the cyber cafes, starting the early 2000s. It provided a new and cheap form of entertainment, and something unique at that time was people are actively playing against each other. If you were playing video games before, you would probably be trying to beat a high score or playing by yourself. So that changed. So in that sense, it also became a social activity as it was for personal satisfaction because people are now playing against each other, with each other. I think from there on, obviously it just got bigger, and we've had national and international qualifiers to international events, and that opened another gate for us. It was unique, that one, because as a race, we Filipinos, we are not physically handicapped. We are not necessarily smaller than other people, or we don't necessarily are not, we don't need to jump as high as others or run as fast. And while we might be behind on other countries in terms of structure and development, there's a lot of motivation because even if that is the case, we're not behind by a lot. Just because the esports industry is just very young to begin with. If I were to add another catalyst in the growth of esports and the acceleration, it would be the rise of the mobile games. the entry point to esports is very low before, and it got even lower. So now we have a whole new generation of esports aspirants.
All right, Ralph, your turn.
Everything that Ren said is true. I would probably add, so let's go to a rough year or a rough decade. For me, it technically started in the late 90s and early 2000s when LAN parties started becoming more prevalent in the country. I was in high school at the turn of the century. And when that happened, all of us were playing Counter Strike. It's either Counter Strike or StarCraft, and just exactly as Ren said, it became a social activity. That in turn, along with the improvements on infrastructure, because before it was only 56K modems, right? And then suddenly you have fiber internet, just blazing fast internet speeds that really allows you to suddenly play from initially. In the 80s, you play by yourself or with a friend beside you. Late 90s, it became friends inside one place. And then early 2000s to late 2000s, suddenly you could play with anyone else located everywhere in the world, right? So when that happened, and when the Philippines finally started to adapt to that, then it suddenly became this phenomenon that we now see. And yes, internet cafes, particularly for our country, had a lot to do with that because internet infrastructure isn't as ideal as other countries. And then in the past 5 years, that's when things really took off in terms of calling it mainstream. Coincides, yes, with mobile games, also with social media.
Right. I mean, yes, I've already witnessed the progression. I mean, we've all witnessed the progression of esports. Like, I thought, like, my ventures in the internet cafes, just playing Ragnarok or the basic Warcraft 3 is just going to end up like there. I never really expected that it's going to explode as we are seeing right now with the international, with the Worlds. I mean, those are like two of the biggest esports tournaments in the world. Now, speaking of Philippine esports, and we've seen that there's a lot of the like popular games like venturing in and out. Like, for example, in the mid-aughts, we had like Ragnarok, and then we also had Counter-Strike, and then all of a sudden Dota came, and then Mobile Legends started to explode, and then there are some other games that are trying to knock into the doorstep like PUBG, NBA 2K, Valorant. So because of what happened in our history with all of these games like coming in, what are the top games in PH Esports? Let's start with you, Ralph.
That's a bit hard to answer because esports is made up of multiple communities. And these communities would certainly have their own preferences, right? Maybe you can classify it based on where they're played. That's how I usually classify it. There are PC games, there are console games, and then there are mobile games. Then there are the in-betweens, like the Nintendo Switch is technically a console, but it's also mobile, right? So there are games that would move ahead in terms of all of those platforms. What easily comes to mind, top of mind for any Filipino gamer now, would either be Mobile Legends or Dota 2 or League of Legends. There are still huge communities, like let's say the fighting game communities. When I say fighting game communities, those are basically all the fighting games like Street Fighter, Tekken 7, Dead or Alive. Lumalabas yung edad ko. So basically, anything that requires one-on-one fights, right? So it really would depend on the platform, the community that you talk about. It's a bit sabihin natin mahirap if we say these are really the top games being played, but there are ways to qualify that, specifically number of players playing it at the same time, or number of players playing it on an average monthly basis.
All right. Wow. Okay. Now, Ren, how about you? What are the top games in PH Esports from your point of view? Go.
Yeah, Ralph, at least hindi quick ang sinabi mo, di ba?
Quick.
Anyway,
Wolfenstein and Doom nga, muntik na lumabas kanina.
I think Ralph covered the bigger games. So I think if you're asking for the top games in Philippines esports, if you want a different answer, I'm just gonna share the perspective on what we have been good at. If you're looking at the recent SEA Games, last year we've had 4 games na nagka-medal tayo. Those were Dota 2, Mobile Legends, StarCraft 2. Those 3 we got gold, and we also medaled for Tekken 7, where we had silver and bronze. Aside from that, historically we've had success in other games as well, like Hearthstone and Crossfire. Um, for Also, we can also have games na nagkaroon ng mga Filipino who were successful in foreign teams in games like PUBG, CS:GO, and those kinds of games. So I think this is a different perspective. Kanina sa player base, I think ito naman si Reswat's perspective. Those were the top Philippine esports games.
Yeah, I mean, you did mention the success we got well with some of these games that you mentioned. Like in Dota, we can't forget what happened in TI6, man. That was like people dub it as the miracle of TI6. I mean, to be honest, when I was watching, every time I watched that video, there's just a bit of tears just boiling out in front of my eyes because the fact that we have an underdog team all of a sudden this defeating like a huge powerhouse, one of the heavy favorites to win it all. I mean, that's a really phenomenal achievement. And then we did mention the other games like Mobile Legends with like Ren Esports, and then all of a sudden you have Onyx and Sunsparks, or not Sunsparks, Aura. Nowadays, trying to compete in the international stages, and AK Alvarez as well for Tekken, also making a name in the international community. So we do see that we're already accumulating success, which could actually pass down to the next generation, and it could actually further entice people to be more involved in this industry. All right, speaking about the popularity of these games, I mean, there are games that are actually there are games that have potential to be an esports event. For example, you did like Candy Crush. You did mention that, Ralph, earlier, and then let's look at another example. WWE 2K, like it has the fighting game mechanics, and then it also has like it could actually go for that trend of sporting games becoming esports, like NBA 2K, FIFA, and Formula One. But it's not yet in that level as compared to those other fighting games like Mortal Kombat or Tekken, or those other sports games like the NBA 2Ks and the FIFA. So, given that example, may I ask, how does a game end up as an esports phenomenon, a major esports phenomenon like Dota, League of Legends, and recently Valorant is making some momentum? Ren, your turn.
Well, initially there are reputable and big publishers who lead the way, but for the most part, it's the gamers who speak, right? There's no guaranteed formula. If there is, then it hindi na magiging ganito yung industry. But basically, there's some common ingredients in the famous and big events. I think the biggest and lasting esports titles always have, in no particular order, a competent publisher, a large audience and market, a sound concept, and a sufficient skill curve. So the last one is important in making sure that the games that you choose, these esports titles, that the better player ends up winning. So it's less skill it's less fluke and less luck and more skill. I think that's a necessary factor in the big esports titles.
All right, your turn, Ralph.
Exactly the same sentiments. It always begins with the publisher. Whoever makes these games, they would always be the main proponents of what it is. They would also have to put a lot of marketing spend on it. So there have been cases where there are very minimal marketing spend, pushing the game, but that's really rare because it depends on how much the community actually accepts it. But for the most part, these games really require a lot then of updates from the publishers, because it has to keep evolving. If people are used to playing it a very certain way and there's no change in it, usually people tend to say, okay, sawa na ako. I've done all I can with this game. There's also that factor of figuring out if the target country where it's released can actually play it. As an example, there are games that have servers not in the Philippines, and playing those games makes the experience horrible. I think that's technically what happened to a lot of games that you may or may not have heard of. And if it's a horrible experience, people won't play it. There's also the fact that at least for the Philippine setting, we're a third world country, and majority of the smartphones aren't high end. They're mostly low to mid end Androids, and games that require intensive graphics and memory, usually those won't fly with majority of the users in the country. At least speaking in terms of mobile gaming, that would also carry over to consoles because we, as an example, we know the PS5 is coming out, but what percentage of the country, what percentage of gamers would actually have the money to buy these platforms, right? So madami factors.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you mentioned all of these factors that actually contribute to the growth of the scene, like Vainglory, for example. I mean, given how the developers made some major errors or some baffling errors with its progress, actually killed the entire esports scene. So that actually shows that it's not just about the number of people that actually play it. Because, for example, Vainglory has a huge following, but all of a sudden it collapsed because the developers didn't really how would you describe it? Like they didn't really made the best decisions or adjust to make the game adapt to the current times, and it's kind of sad because it had so much potential, but all of a sudden it's not just the community building is one aspect, but obviously the back end support needs to be further dissected or improved upon for a game to explode. And we've seen that from the likes of Dota and from League of Legends with how Valve and Riot are doing respectively. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are some of my questions to Ralph and Ren regarding the basics of esports. But of course, that's just the icing in the cake, and we're going to dig further deep toward the roots of esports, as I'm going to introduce my fellow gold diggers who's going to ask some questions to Ren and Ralph. Simone, Relly, and Robbie, to quote majority of the shoutcasters from Mineski TV, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thanks, Carlos. Hi, guys. So it's just apt we ended on the topic of adaptability also, and we're gonna dig deeper into entering the industry and particularly in the context of your experiences. So let's start with Ralph. Why were the likes of the telcos or other industry partners and you willing to take the risk of entering the industry? And was it risky or for the games investors like PLDT, like Smart, and you guys as early adopters to embrace esports despite it being understandably imperfect then and now?
Okay. Sorry, medyo technically, if we look at your question, there are three parts to the whole thing. First part, I would tackle it based on the companies, businesses that actually entered the industry, and I'm gonna be talking from the brand side. Okay, you mentioned the telcos, PLDT, Smart, Globe. All of these companies, it makes sense for them to come in because internet, data, communications, all of those play a huge part in making an actual esports game title successful. You cannot play these games without them, right? Without the internet. Technically you can, but where's the fun in playing by yourself, right? So that's where the term endemic to the industry would come from. Brands endemic to the industry naturally will enter it because they're already part of it anyway. They're part of the whole ecosystem. The bigger question for them, I suppose, would be the amount of investment that they're pouring to the whole industry, especially in the Philippines. In other countries, it's a no-brainer because they're more fit infrastructure-wise with in terms of how they can support the whole industry. With the Philippines, we are physically disconnected, right? It's an archipelago. We do not have cables running from the west to the east and the north to the south. We probably do underwater. I don't really know the the actual infrastructure there, but obviously it's nowhere near a bigger island like, let's say, the US. And that's where them coming into esports really comes into play. In the past year specifically, we have seen a lot of region-based tournaments prop up, all being done from Manila. So let's say even on right now ongoing, we have a tournament being conducted in Mindanao. We have one in CDO and one in Zamboanga, and we're all doing that from Manila. We have no team conducting these tournaments in the south. We're all doing it from the comfort of our studio in Quezon City. And the reason why we want to do this, why businesses do this, is because it makes sense. The sheer number of people playing games rather, is just astounding. There are numerous studies, and usually the prevalent number that would come out would be around 40 to 45 million gamers. There are 40 to 45 million gamers in the Philippines, and they're all focused on playing, whether it's a way to pass time, or it's a way to communicate or to socialize with other people. These are it's the new normal, right? Even before the pandemic, it was the new normal already. When Ren and I were kids, and I'm gonna be generous here and say that we are the same age, kunyari. When Ren and I were kids, being a gamer, ang tingin sa'yo weird ka, right? But now, if you don't game, if you don't know what the current games are, you're weird because hindi ka uso, hindi mo alam kung ano yung nilalaro ng mga tao, right? So that's how I define it in terms of the risk of how brands come in. It makes sense because if you reach 40% of the population, it's a no-brainer. You have to be part of it. As far as the third part of your question goes, which is the personal side, I guess, mine was technically by accident. It was a career progression. I started out in my career not in esports naman. I started out in hardware. I was the product manager for Intel Philippines through Tech. And when I moved from Intel to TV5, and we thought that, hey, this is an up-and-coming sport. Let's try to put esports on TV. Then they saw me. They said, oh, you came from Intel. You probably know computer brands. You probably know sponsors. Can you handle esports as well? I didn't really have a choice because they assigned it to me. And then as things moved along, I saw that it was a viable career opportunity. There's a lot of revenue that comes into esports. But let me qualify that statement. That revenue definitely means that it is still a business. It's not just a sport, it's a business. So what I did with my career choice was to tackle it from the business side. There are people who try to enter it from a player side, and that's not what I did. I entered it from the business side. And in businesses, it's usually calculated risks, right? Like you see, okay, is this company stable? Is the industry stable? Is it something that I want to live with for 3-5 years or even the rest of your life? And yeah, that's pretty much how I entered it. Sorry, haba. Haba sinabi ko.
Okay lang. Thank you for that, Ralph. How about you, Ren? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think for the question about the risk of entering or why do telcos and some investors enter, a line that I hear from multiple people, and it's not verbatim, but the line is something like, "I'm not sure where esports will be in the next 5-10 years, but I want to be there. I want to see where it goes." So that's kind of how a lot of investors are looking at it. I think best case it's going to be a home run. Esports is gonna keep growing. Worst case, right now, it's arguably one of the most effective tools to reach a younger demography. So it can be an investment, but it can also be written off as a marketing spend if you are playing your cards correctly. Is that risky? I would say so. I think there is a relative amount of risk in that. And I say that not because I think esports is going to stop abruptly, but because of three reasons I think are kind of uncertain for an investor. Number one, esports carries a relatively sorry, it carries a bad stigma, and to an extent, it's probably justified, unfortunately. And and with conservatives like our country, that can be a challenge to brands and sponsors and parents and whatnot, right? Number two, the commercial ownership of esports titles is potentially a challenge for many. There's no guarantee. In a way that you can, for example, spend on building the Philippine basketball team or football team, and you know that you can invest for the future. But if you do that for a specific game, there's no guarantee that that game will live on. Worst case, there's no guarantee that they're gonna let you play that game in the first place. So I think that's the second part. The third part is the volatility of the game itself. Uh, as Rob said kanina, with the esports titles, there's a lot of changes. Um, we call it patches and versions. So it's very possible that a game can be significantly changed overnight. And if you're training in one specific thing, it can be potentially dangerous. So, I think with those risks, I think ang hirap sa part na yun is, these are things mostly out of your control. Uh, but at the same time, I think if you play your cards right, I think it's something that's worth being courageous about, both in terms of both in the perspective of an investor, as well as in the perspective of someone trying to get in the industry.
Thanks for that, Ren. You mentioned something about being courageous,
Mhm.
and I'd like to focus on that. I mean, you guys have made certain sacrifices getting into the industry, and for example, like with Ralph, moving from Intel to working to a TV with a TV network, and what you're doing now also, and also same with you, Ren. You also talk about how you needed a backup plan before actually plunging in to the esports industry. Could you talk to us more about that personal experience for you guys
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
into the industry? Go ahead, Ren.
Okay, well, I took a relatively safe approach. I did esports part time, and calling it part time is funny because for the most part it's actually volunteer work. It was a passion project. When I started in early decade, maybe early to 2010s, it was, you know, it was a bunch of people with the same interest. Uh, what happened there is I came to a realization that I cannot play as much as I had in my earlier years. I'm not proud of it, but I was playing a lot, like skipping school a lot. So, um, but I learned from
Stay
that
in school,
experience.
guys.
Yeah, stay in school. I learned from that experience, so I'm not proud of that. But I want to contribute to gaming somehow, so I decided to write about the game that I like to play, which was Dota. Think of a beat reporter, but for esports games. Eventually, I covered multiple events as well, both locally and internationally. So there were a lot of points I was actually traveling overseas to cover esports events, and that was a thing. And as funny as that may sound, many of them are volunteer work. especially in the early years. I was doing a few hundred articles per month. All of this since the start, I was doing part time, either as a student or later on as a full time employee. My 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 big leap of faith was only like 3 years ago. I was after doing esports gigs for around 6 years at that point, and actually had the chance to go full time earlier, but I wasn't too comfortable with the risk I was taking. But at 2017, I felt that I, number one, had built an extensive network, so I feel na I can have enough gigs to sustain myself. And number two, I have saved up a bit, um, so I can focus on doing this for a period of time without worrying how I will be living day to day. So that was how I got into this position.
It's interesting also that before really getting into it, that you made sure that you had something else like a backup plan there, and we're gonna tie that in with Ralph's experience also. How was your experience coming into the industry?
Mine is drastically different. I kind of touched on it a while ago, where it's basically a real change in industry because of where I was brought by my previous employer. But what happened with me is a bit different. Kasi I have always been conditioned and brought up to see employment as as stability. My family is hardcore corporate talaga. My father works for Toyota. He's been there for close to 30 years, I think. He's been there since 1988. And everything that I've been taught has always been corporate is the way to go. I actually envisioned myself to be in a hardcore corporate setting from the very beginning. After graduating from college, I tried to make it as a filmmaker. Went to the States, went back because it was recession there, and the first job that opened up was the one with Intel. After that, I decided to go back to my first love, which was really production, hence TV5, right? But it didn't lead to a production role. It really led to a business role. And that whole scenario tied into what I felt was something that I should be doing for my family. I'm happily married. I have 2 kids, and whenever you have a family to support, changing careers is not it's not an easy decision. So I actually only went all in rather with esports last year. Previously, what I used to do with TV5 was a combination of esports and digital sports. So what you see with the PBA and TV5's other sporting activities, I was always part of the team that helped monetize it. And when there was an opportunity to go all in with esports, it took quite a huge leap of faith rather to decide to do that. I had to think kasi if I looked at TV5's revenue for esports prior to me moving here to Drive Concepts where I am now, there was a steady increase already, and the potential was huge. But in no way was it as stable as a company like TV5 or pretty much any major corporation that you have. So moving into esports was something that, if you think about it, is still a huge risk. I even have a very short, funny story. My mom and dad, when they first heard that I got promoted in TV5 as head of the esports business unit, they said, "Hey Ralph, good job, congratulations. But isn't that aren't you gambling?" They basically said, "Aren't you gambling?" And I thought, yeah, this is kind of a gamble with my career because, esports versus digital sports. Yes, it is a gamble. And then siguro mga 2 weeks ako hindi pinapansin ng mom ko, and she she doesn't really talk to me as much. I didn't really think there was anything wrong with that until my dad said, Ralph, tara, drive tayo. Let's go to Antipolo. Let's take a drive. He never does that. He never says, let's go take a drive. And then during that drive, he suddenly said, you know what, your mom's so disappointed in you. I was shocked. Like, what did I do? May ginawa ba akong kasalanan? So, it's because you're destroying lives. There's a lot of lives that are destroyed with gambling. And I said, gambling? Wait, what do you mean? I'm not part of PAGCOR. Then he said, yeah, but you're part of e-games. Oh my God, pa, that's not what I do. E-games is not esports. That's not what I do. So that's the thing. Even my family, and again, I'm in my mid-30s, but my parents didn't understand what I was doing, and they still thought that it was a gamble, literally gambling rather. Kasi kala nila e-games yan eh. Long story short, bati na kami ng mom ko. Hindi na siya galit sa akin. Proud na rin siya sa akin ngayon kasi part na ako ng company na bumubuhay ng ibang pamilya. So, yeah, it really takes a lot of courage to do something that's not as established yet. Kasi while it is huge, it's still very young, especially in our country. It's still very young.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Ralph. And you guys both have different stories coming into the industry. And also you guys have different roles in the industry as on the business side, on the events management, and as storytellers also. And I just want to say, Ren, like imagine that you were writing 100 articles every month. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Are you serious? 100?
At least it's a lot.
That's love.
Crazy. I mean, so in these different roles and possibilities in esports, we can't really expect that it'll be easy coming in. And often preparation and managed expectations makes having the courage to start something easier. So could you share with us why do you choose to stay in esports, and what can we expect or what will help us prepare going into it? And especially, what does it take to get into it or to stay in it? Ralph?
I think people just really have to understand that it's probably not what they think it is. People think that, it's esports, so they're probably going to play a lot of games. It's farthest from the truth. In fact, we barely have time to play anymore. What little... There's a saying that we have, Noren, where, you work in esports, you probably don't play anymore, right? Because it's really difficult. It's really a grind. It's an overused term already, but it's really a huge grind. You have to understand that you probably won't be given everything you want and served what you want on a silver platter. You have to be able to realize as well that there's probably a lot of things that you don't know yet. That's one of the issues that we have with the industry. Again, it's very, very young, and there aren't that many people with experience pushing it forward yet. I know of a lot of people who would be great to migrate in this industry, but it's different. If you want to get into it and you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, you have to be prepared.
Thanks, Ralph. Anything to add to that, Ren?
Yeah, for me, I keep doing what I do for the most part because I enjoyed it. Right? It's not a noble cause. I wouldn't say na, I kept doing what I did para maiangat ang esports. It's very far from that. I really just enjoy it. I thought I was adding value, and so I kept doing it. Now, for my suggestion to people who are looking into getting into the industry, there's two unique perspectives. One is the player, the other is everyone else. For a player, it's more like an athlete, right? You have to. It's heavily skill based, and you gauge yourself against other people. the good part about esports is it's easier to gauge it. Kasi you're not necessarily limited by geography. Unlike traditional sports that you have to be against with them physically, it's you don't have to have that in esports. So it's easier to do that. It's also easier to find coaches and mentors. And at least if you cannot find that with them, you can find role models, especially in terms of how you want to pattern your game to be. And literally, literally everything is in YouTube for the most part. So for players, it's keep on grinding and improving, and at the same time set targets and goals. For everyone else, this is I think just every other job out there. So it's to add value to yourself, and then from there you find places where you can give and add value. It sounds cliche, but I don't think there's really something that's truly unique to esports. Before I would have said something unique in esports is you would be working with a lot of younger people, but now more and more companies are hiring senior personnel from different fields. So that's not even the case.
Yeah.
So let's just look at it as we would any other job. So you know, the usual suggestions that you get from those from improving yourself, setting targets and setting goals.
And you talked about values and setting goals, and now we're interested in what the big picture is. So that was my last question for you guys, and I'm gonna hand you guys over to Robbie De Vera. RDV.
Thanks, Sim. So, we learned a lot from the sharing of Ren and Ralph so far. And what struck me the most in that particular conversation is the level of courage, the amount of work, and the passion that not just the backers of the industry brought with them in getting involved in esports, but also the personal courage as well, coming from the personal risks that Ren and Ralph faced, coming from the misconception of esports. It's a very funny story that you shared there, Ralph. So I also like the part on making sure that wherever we get ourselves into, you make sure that there is a value exchange. So I like what you said, Ren, about making sure that you add value and you look for value as well in whatever you do. So I take it over to Ralph first. Ralph, I like that you bring a corporate point of view and how you lend that to the esports industry. So it's interesting to know from your perspective, why do you think the sport was included in the Southeast Asian Games? Was this really part of the industry's plans?
I don't think it. Well, there are several ways to approach that. If you ask me personally, I don't think it was something that we envisioned to happen that quickly. Primarily because there were always talks about the Olympic movement, right? What is it? There has to be at the very least the most minimal level of business involved, right? Dapat you make it as pure a sporting event as possible. And the minute you have esports as a sport within anything in the realm of the Olympics, it is questionable because companies actually own these games, right? Unlike basketball or football where no single company owns these games. In esports kasi, the minute you put it as an Olympic sport, may makikinabang eh. And that's automatically the game publishers. However, you also have to not discount the fact that it is the sport that the youth already wants to see. The conversation of whether or not it's a sport or not is mutanda academic because the youth has accepted it as a sport, and it doesn't matter anymore because yun nga, with that acceptance, there is now the reality that it's treated as a sport. And when you have globally billions of people watching esports, that's obviously something that a lot of people would want to get into. I know that the FISGOC or the POC saw the beauty in that, and which is why that's one of the reasons why they really wanted to push for esports. I know Congressman Cayetano has said that publicly, that the reason why they included esports was that they wanted to expand the Southeast Asian Games to a bigger audience. And with that, it made sense, right? It really made sense. Locally, yes, there were huge pushes to get it there, but I don't think that the people in esports right now, without the help of government, would have been able to bring it to what it was. It had to be a confluence of several events.
Gotcha. So what I heard from you is that I really like what you share about it being very circumstantial. Pero from what I heard is that there was a certain part that people saw it as an inevitable part of the future, just like what you said. And maybe just to share with our audience on the Olympic ideals, why the Olympics were put into fruition in the first place. It's about, an event that fosters solidarity, friendship, fair play. So that's what the Olympics or the IOC terms as the definition of sports. So to that extent, Ralph, you're right. So it does lend itself to being viewed as a sport. So thanks very much for that. So I take it over to Ren. So Ren, I can only imagine the challenge of trying on a daily basis to change perception on the stigmas that come with esports. And despite this, and after learning about your backstory, coming from really the earlier days of esports in the country, and coming from more of like a media volunteer in your early days, you seem to be very optimistic about it. And I keep telling you that after seeing your video on background check on Mineski TV, it was you struck me as someone who was very optimistic, welcoming esports as an inevitable part of the future, just like Ralph has said. So my question to you is, why are you optimistic, and why did you foresee this to happen much earlier than the rest?
Well, honestly, I did not think that it would be this big this fast. I did, however, think it was only a matter of time. Gaming in esports was and is an interest. That's how it started for me. When I picked it up, the hobby really, my only desire was to do it more. I want to play more. And I don't think that's unique at all. I think that's the actual definition of interest. But from the time I picked it up when I was young up to now, I have seen a paradigm shift. How gaming evolved into something nerdy, like what Rob said kanina, something weird, and it turned into something cool. Suddenly, yung mga cool kids na yung mga naglalaro. And now, it's something normal. So if you see that progression, and for me, I not only saw that, I was also a part of that. So I never felt the need to rush the rise of esports and gaming because I just know that it will come, right? I have so many people over the course of my life tell me that there is no future in gaming. There's things of that line. Now you have to grow up. You have to stop playing now. And I have people question the integrity of esports and the industry, and similar to what you said, the stigma. But I really never felt pressure and the urgency to show them otherwise because I know it will be there. It does not take scientific data or studies to see that the younger generation now is actually being very into technology, and I know this is something you would have seen with your peers, that people start gaming now way younger with their Minecrafts and these kinds of games. And on the other side, a lot of people don't even stop gaming at all. When before there was a limit na if you finish your teens, dapat tapos ka na sa games. It's not the case anymore right now, and I think it's just gonna expand. That's how we see it then, and it's proving to be the case now.
Right. I like what you said. No, so what it tells me is that you really had a clear vision of where this thing will go, and like you, I'm also surprised in terms of how it has grown in terms of leaps and bounds to the points of having Philippines having one of the first recognized IOC medal events in terms of an esports event around the world. I love that. I also like what you said about your belief in it, so much so that you really stuck to it. So, follow-up question to you, Ren. Why were tournaments like the Nationals conceived in the first place? What was your goal behind this?
Well, the Nationals specifically what was born from the desire to elevate Philippine esports. And one of the many ways to do that is to add structure. We want to be an avenue where players can focus on developing their career by providing consistent tournaments for them to compete at and having franchises to support them. To give an example, also to expound further, the way pro gaming careers are, and this is largely tied to the grand tournament prize pool heavy format, is that careers will only be meaningful and sustainable if you can grab huge tournament wins. These are the events that get hyped up, maririnig mo with hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in pesos in price. Now, what that does is it turns the careers of players into a race against time. Because kung ganun nga lang, kung ang way lang to, ang paraan lang para mag-gauge yung success ng tao is to win that big title, the question turns to how long can I keep doing this before I decide to move on with my life? Or worse, how long can I do this until life forces me to move on? So for us, we want to provide the pathway. It used to be a jump from a competitive player to world champion. Yun yung kailangan mo, competitive world champion, and we want to bridge the gap by providing a sustainable and continuous local event to help them get there. And to an extent, we want to create an ecosystem that says, hey, not everyone is going to be one of the best in the world, but I can still have a career for myself by being one of the best in the country. So it's also a possibility that we want to put out there. Are we necessary for our athletes to be world class? I don't think so. But will we help in making more athletes world class and improving the overall level of the sport? I really believe that is the case. I won't say we are there now, but that is what we want to be and it's what we're working towards to be.
I like what you said, no? So again, it goes back to the vision that you have for the progress of the sport. And with what you just said about ensuring that the tournaments are designed to bring out the high level, not just the high level, but really the consistency and the importance of values, really lends itself to more sports-like training already, similar to traditional sports. So speaking of guiding the industry forward, I turn you over to Relly for his line of questions. So Relly?
Thanks, Rob. Wow, guys. We're actually learning a lot here, I mean, just to tell you honestly, we're all like beginners here. So it's like Esports 101, except for Carlos, of course, right? So I think he's pretty much in the thick of things already, But yeah, I mean, thanks for doing this, guys. I'm not sure, Ren, if you remember. I think we kind of met. I think last Feb. I think it was in City of Dreams. I think we had that One FC talk.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And just a funny story about Ren, right? Because I was with a friend, and we were talking together, and he happened to pass by, and my friend actually said, "Oh, hold on, I gotta talk to Ren." All right, he's the guy. So I was like, okay, she just left me there, and okay, all right, go ahead and talk. It's like, okay, no, but kidding aside. Okay, guys, for in terms of my question, I think I'm gonna ask Ren first, right? In terms of the whole esports industry, right? And you guys both mentioned that we're not there yet. It's still in infancy. We're still growing, but what are we doing now to actually get things to where we want to be? I mean, like if we were to look at Europe, like listening to all these webinars the past few months, people are now talking about esports and esports development and how they're pushing it and how it's the best time now to push it because of the pandemic, that everyone is just at home and can actually play. Where are we now in terms of the local setting?
Okay, well before you answer, I want to clarify lang kung binabutter up ako ni Relly. I think the true story that happened there was na pagkamalan akong one championship fighter because of my thing. So, anyway, from where we are, the official NSA recognition has been very new. It's a few months old. but it's something we cherish nonetheless. It was an important step that we feel is going to be pivotal and crucial as we move forward. We are now working towards actual steps to safeguard the Philippine esports industry, and this is across multiple parts, like from players to publishers. Sorry, not publishers, to local partners, and then teams, orgs, and frankly, it's a lot of work. We have, it's not something we can do overnight. Like I said, these things are so different to begin with. But at the same time, I think we are a team. I'm confident that we can pull this off. Um, because as new as our recognition is, we are made of very um, reputable people who have been really pouring their lives into esports. Many of them poured way more than what I and Ralph here. I'm speaking in behalf of him, but basically mga tito and lolos of esports, yung mga kasama namin, and
Yung mga mas
titas and
matanda
lolas.
sa amin.
So I think some of them can really say they have started it, and I know with the attention we're getting, we're happy that the community is very helpful, uh, and we really want to make a change. A lot of it right now is learning what our exact capacity is. I think there's also a lot of uncertainties pa. Obviously, the pandemic is slowing a lot of things down. Wherein we might have face-to-face meetings now with PSC, to an extension even POC. We really haven't got to do that yet, and it's not because of them. So those are things we want to iron out, as well as our relationship with the Games and Amusement Board. So to explain them to the others, the POC and PSC side is responsible of the amateur and grassroots level. Gab is in charge, or is to police the pro side, and they have been very helpful. They have been trying to include us in their meetings with the DOH. They have been trying to consider us as part of as an official sport. So we're happy na nandun, and I think we want to basically be there firsthand to make sure there's more attention being given into esports.
Ralph, care to add to that one?
Yeah, the difficulty with having the Peso NSA up there is that the role of an NSA is really to govern the sport, right? It's seen as the local local body to govern the sport for the whole country. And the thing is, prior to it being an NSA, the only I guess governance that we can talk about is that of the Games and Amusements Board of the Philippines. To their credit, chairman, sorry, to their credit, Ms. Cynthia Canizal, I think Commissioner June and Chairman Baha Mitra, all of them really have been focusing a lot on esports. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions with the roles, right? Like what's Gab supposed to do? How do you define a professional player? Those are things that they have a definition of, while at the same time it doesn't really hold true for specific games. And with that comes a lot of difficulties in terms of actual governance. The good thing is, and I'm taking this part of what I'm saying from what Ren initially said about the nationals providing opportunities. The good thing is the NSA being there provides that additional avenue of opportunity. If we look at how traditional sports are structured, you have sports from from the grassroots side. Thinking in terms of basketball, you have the Milo Best for grassroots, right? And then the school-based varsity teams for the grassroots. And then you move on to kids playing regionally in the, let's say, the Palarong Pambansa and other school-based tournaments. And then you move on to amateur tournaments like sanctioned by FIBA and SBP, like FIBA Championships, SIABA, Asian Games. There are none of those for esports kasi. That's the difficulty. It tries to borrow that traditional setup, but it definitely is not traditional. We obviously would want to set it up like that, but there are a lot of moving pieces, and we cannot possibly think that what works for volleyball will work, what works for basketball will work for esports, what works for boxing will work for esports. These things all have to be considered when it comes to creating. When it comes to actually governing the sport in the country.
Okay, so I see where you're getting at there. So I think the moral here is like really you wanna professionalize things, right? Making sure everything's legit, but it's not an easy process, right? And I think the upside to this is that with you guys, you, Red and Ralph, it's all for the love of esports, for the love of the game, right? There's no other vested interest, and to see it through, to see it grow, to be able to give guidance to, let's say, to Gab and to the other NSAs just to make this happen. I think it's headed in the right direction. Because at the start, if you get people who are not for the sport, right, it's just not going to progress. So we need people like this, people like you guys, to be able to to see it grow and make sure that you continue to do all these activities to be able to focus on the grassroots, to be able to raise it to a different level. Okay, so I have two more questions now. I think I'll ask a separate question. So I'll throw this to Ralph. I think you mentioned in our last conversation about like participants starting at a very young age, right?
Yes.
But they also retire at a young age as well.
Yes.
Right. Given this, okay, as a parent, there's also a need for parental guidance, right? And it's crucial, especially at the ages that was it 7 or 8? I don't know what it is, but there's a need to push for responsible gaming. So how do you guys approach this? How do you communicate and convince people out there that it's really not what it's supposed to be?
Right. Well, for my part, I usually approach it in terms of the mindset that too much of anything is always bad. That will always hold true. There are also proven studies that it can be addictive, and that's very real. You really see a lot of people get addicted to it, and that's what causes a lot of anxieties on the parental side of things, right? On the other hand, you get that level of thinking then kumita yung anak ko because he actually won easily, let's say 50,000 pesos in a weekend tournament. And then there's this thinking that as a stage parent, my son is good at playing video games, and hey, if he actually earns a lot out of this, then this is a career path that he can take. There are some parents that are like that. On my side, as a parent, what I usually do is tell them that there are games that they can play at a certain age, and games that they cannot play while connected on the internet, because there's still that side of it. We have to remember that when talking about stuff like these in terms of regulation, in terms of parental involvement, it's not necessarily esports per se. It's more on the gaming side already. So we go back to the definition, diba? You have gaming, which is everyone can game pretty much, and then esports, which is competitive video gaming. Gaming per se will have its own set of stigmas. Esports has its own set of rules and regulations naman. In terms of how the Games and Amusements Board regulates it, anyone below 18 would always require pediatric clearance and parental clearance. So the government is trying to do its part in terms of regulation pagdating naman dun. What is difficult talaga is getting um, more mainstream support and acceptance, particularly in schools. It will take some time. I'm also coming from the standpoint of someone who works for the athletics office of a university. So I'm one of the program heads of cheerleading for Ateneo, and conversations about putting esports in the UAAP always comes up, and people have to remember that it's not as easy as they think. You'll see a lot of press releases about people approaching the UAAP board for it, but the UAAP board by themselves, you have to remember, they're a board comprised of educators. The board of trustees are presidents of the schools, and as such, that carries the board would always carry with them a mindset that, okay, we are an educational institution first before encouraging games. May stigma pa rin yan. That will not disappear very quickly. There are programs that the Philippine Esports Organization already utilizes, such as the Youth Esports program handled by Mineski. There are also other grassroots tournaments that some of our member organizations have. In particular, Goliath Concepts always would make grassroots tournaments from behind the scenes. We don't have one for ourselves, but there are brands that have grassroots tournaments, like in particular the one that I mentioned earlier. And with all of these, we are always very strict with age. That's what we try to do. If you're below 16, we usually frown on it. 17, medyo okay na. I know that it's a long conversation to have in terms of emotional maturity and actual age, but ang hirap kasi whenever people would say, sir, kakatahong classes para makalaro sa tournament. No, don't do that. We always say no, which is why we only have tournaments on the weekends. We rarely have tournaments on weekdays. There's really a lot there. The industry, if you liken it to a person, it's not even running yet. It's starting to learn how to walk pa lang. Previously it was crawling, now it's learning how to walk. Pero suddenly people are pushing the whole thing to run. And with that comes a lot of delays in policies in terms of how we want to bring it forward. So that's pretty much my thoughts on the matter.
That's great. Thanks for clearing that up. The whole, responsible gaming, and of course the difference with that with esports, no? And of course how you still, follow the rules in terms of age requirements, the maturity of the player. And then of course when you mentioned about, about schools accepting this, eventually it will happen, right? Let's take a case in point. We never thought that UAP would accept the 3-on-3, right? And now the 3-on-3 is now part of the whole sports program because it's now recognized by FIBA as an internationally accepted sport. So eventually it's gonna get there. It's already happening all around the world, in all around the world, right? But I guess with us, we have to build on it, to be able to really get to where we want it to be. So thanks for that, Ralph. So my last question for Ren, talking about the whole, esport ecosphere, players, organizers, publishers, what will be that one unifying or driving factor that will lift the Philippine esports industry to a higher level? What is the mindset?
Okay. Yeah, before I answer, can I go back on your previous question for Ralph?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I do think it's a perspective that I have, since one of our franchises internationals is actually a school. SEI Olympians is one of our franchise, and I had to talk to them when I was trying to get them to join. And it's a very similar concern that you raised. Ren, am I telling the parents of my students na wag na sila mag-aral, maglaro na lang sila? And then from their perspective, they're educators, and education is priority. And then I have to tell them, and I showed them now, we're not telling them to do this full time. It's a hobby first and foremost. and it can be healthy, more importantly. So I would imagine kasi one of the big reason why it's not, why addiction is widespread is because it's almost never tackled properly. Ang approach ng mga nakikita ko, especially from before, is if your kid is playing too much games, you stop them from playing completely. So what happens? What happens is the kids know how to hide playing, know how to conceal their playing better. Right? They play with their friends, they play in arcades, not necessarily at home, but it's not gonna stop them from playing. But it's changing because now we have gamers from the previous generation who have now kids, and I think the positive part about that is, from what I can see with these peers, at least the people I know of, is they're now better at dealing in this circumstance. It's now been there, done that moment, and that's something that the previous generation cannot say. So I think it's something that's gonna correct itself over time. Eventually, lahat ng parents ng mga kids is probably played a game or video game or two at a point in their life, and it's something they can relate to personally. And what I suggest now to people is to strive to not let gaming negatively affect their work, school, family, and relationship. I think that's a very simple statement that I usually advise to younger people. Now for the gaming ecosphere, as you coined it, really. I think we should. I'll probably fall back to another cliche here. Um, for the most part, the Philippine esports scene and in general, esports is very disjointed. Kanya-kanya ng interest, and that's because it's really a big industry with different parts. And for me, the important unifying driving factor is to recognize that one's victory is everyone's victory. We are, it's directly proportional. If the player is successful, it means probably that the organizer is successful, the game is successful. So we should be striving to function together, and that we should be looking out for each other. So collaboration is great, and on the flip side, obviously healthy competition is also great. On top of that, I think something that's going to be really useful as we move forward is if we can channel the influence that we have, especially since we have our audience are actually start very young, and many of them in their formative years. If we can utilize that influence properly, I think it will return dividends to us in the long run. However, toxic behaviors or mindset or stigma that might be here now, it's something that we can definitely correct over time. We can potentially correct over time.
Great, that's a good answer. That's a good answer right there. So, yeah. So again, it's one's victory is everyone's victory. I like what you said about that one, and again, as something as early stages where we are right now, I think this is what we need: all working together, collaborating together, just to make sure that we remain competitive, or again, as you say, leading towards becoming professional, of course, and then of course bring in all the values that come with it. Again, like what you said, responsible gaming, how to conduct yourself, and I think these are the things that are the tools for success, and with everyone else. So, hey, thanks, guys. I will turn you over now to Carlos to give the summary for what we've actually talked about. So, thanks again.
Thanks, Reddy.
All right. Thank you so much, Relly. Before we proceed to the summary, I'm going to be doing some shout outs to those of you watching. Shout out to Christian Go, to Cheska De Jesus, to Tim Cardenas, to Irvin Basanyes, to Ian Serranilla, to Carol Santos, Danny San Agustin, Denise Chua, Rochelle Zorate, Leonardo Zagala, Enzo Vale, Rosana Feliciano, TJ Ramos, Regina Solma Cecilia, Rolly De Vera, Jeronimo James Nora, Frederick Gumaru, ST Archer, Sheena Uy, Clarita Lee, Patsy Gangan, Lem Laranas, Jeanette Piwi Goyena, CJ Senojas, Jofet Camacho, Lisandra, James Carlos, Charito, Abelia, Ismael, and RD Rogashon, the man behind Overdrive Studios, one of the most recognizable graphic designers in the esports scene, not only in the Philippines, but also in the entire Southeast Asian region. And I'm hoping he's going to thank me for the shout out so that he's getting more projects and he'll minimize his sleeping patterns. All right. Okay. Some additional questions from the audience. From SD Archer, he asked, do you believe that the PH can give gaming and esports the recognition it deserves, like how it is in the other countries? Ren, well, mind if you answer that question?
Yeah, I think we have done so already, right? With being the host for the SEA Games, having recognition in both the pro and amateur side. I do think we have given it recognition above them or beyond what many countries are providing. Can it get better? Sure, of course. But as it is right now, we are already, I think, we treat it very well. Even the players, I can't say it's the same for every sport, but I do know to an extent the best players are somewhat rock stars already in their own field. So yeah, I think we can.
Right. Okay. And another question this time for Ralph. And I mean, you did mention this with your discussion with Relly. So Danny San Agustin said, how do you ease the fears of parents who are apprehensive to support their kids to pursue esports as a career?
I think we need to churn out more stories of successes. Part of the reason why people think it's not a good choice to pursue this as a career is that there are very few stories about the successful ones, and inversely the ones that fail. This industry is not for everyone. I'll have to be very upfront about that. So it does carry with it a lot of successes and failures, as with any industry. I think you just have to approach it as if it were any other job or career. It is what it is. It's not just games. It is now a legitimate career path. You'd be blessed if you actually go through it with the guidance of people who know what they're doing. Because believe me, there are some people who do not know what they're doing, and they're just trying to figure it out as we go along. But for the most part, there are a lot of options out there. You just have to understand that it will carry with it its fair share of successes and failures.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was such a beautiful response, Ralph. I mean, your boss, Jobert Yu, is watching. He says, great talk. I mean, chances
What's
are
up, boss?
with that response, he's going to give you a promotion. Nicole Alipalo, your fellow office mate, might even support that as well. All right. So, well, I mean, based on the stories that I've learned from both of you, I think we can actually learn 3 important tips from you. Like for every challenge, for everyone who's experiencing a challenge, for everyone who considers themselves as underdogs, to startups on how they can break barriers. What we can learn from Ralph and Ren are 3 important tips. 1 is to have courage. 2 is to establish and stay true to your vision. And most importantly, stay rooted in values. All right. We're about to close our episode for today with everyone's favorite segment known as Crunch Time. So, what are the rules of Crunch Time? Well, if you've watched our previous episodes, basically we're going to be asking some simple questions. You're going to be responding with simple replies. No need to explain unless if you like to do so. So, Ren and Ralph, are you ready for Crunch Time?
I guess.
You're scared.
All right, here we go.
Ready.
Right. Ready or not, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And first question, PC or console? Ralph, would you like to start?
PC.
All right, both very loyal to the PC. All right, next, let's go for consoles, PlayStation or Xbox? PlayStation, all right. Okay, how about this one? What's your all-time favorite video game?
I'd have to say it's Doom. I grew up playing that, so
Oh,
I still remember all the cheat codes.
Oh,
I have to
old
say it's
school.
Doom. Mhm.
Ah,
The Gardenscapes is a close second.
wow. Okay. All right. How about you, Ren?
It's between Dota and Dota 2 for me.
I mean, well, that's actually how you started your career in esports. All right. Next, favorite video game character.
Oh, that's a hard one. And in terms of being iconic, probably say Lara Croft.
Lara Croft. Okay.
I will not say why, but yes, Lara Croft.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Ren, your turn.
I actually don't have a favorite character. uh, I think right now it's probably Hades in Hades because he has the best voice lines. Yeah.
Hades, man, that's actually nominated in the gaming awards right now. I mean, an indie game reaching that stage is really commendable. All right, next. Favorite role-playing game class?
Shucks, I pass. I don't play RPGs.
Oh, you don't play RPGs. All right. How about you, Ren?
I'm a tank.
You're a tank. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. A paladin or a knight. I see.
Yeah.
All right, next. Favorite esports or gaming personality, local or internationally? Go.
Ren, go muna.
Kyle. I love Kyle.
Kyle
yeah.
Friedman. Yeah, he's a really frank Dota analyst. I also love him as well. All right, Ralph.
Locally, I'd always go with Lon and Duma. An iconic tandem.
Yep, I see. I mean, you can't really separate both of them. All right. Next. Favorite esports team or organization, locally or internationally? Go.
Playbook.
Easy.
Oh, okay. All right. Ren?
For me, it was LGD just because I cheered for them the longest. Yeah.
LGD. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
they've been recently sponsored by Paris Saint-Germain, so that's a huge step for them. All right. Next. Dota or League of Legends?
Dota 2.
Dota.
I haven't even tried League, so.
So you're going to stick with Dota. All right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, next. This one. Would you prefer a player with good mechanical skills but a toxic personality, or a player with mediocre mechanical skills but a friendly personality?
Mediocre but friendly.
All right.
It depends if I'm competing or not. If I'm competing, I don't care if you're toxic. I want the better player. But if we're just chilling with someone, then the better personality would be it for me.
Yeah, you know what? Your answer actually makes sense because I know some players with a really toxic personality, but they're actually at the top level. So
Yeah, if you want to win, right?
yeah,
So,
I mean, there's,
beggars can't be choosers, right?
yeah, can't be denied. Okay, next. Playing as a damage dealer or as a tank support?
Damage dealer.
Damage
I'm
dealer.
I'm a tank support, so I stay true to my class.
Tank support. All right. Okay, next. Would you prefer being a play-by-play caster or an analyst?
Analyst.
Analyst. Okay.
Analyst as well, something I actually did before.
Wow, analyst. Because most people in the industry would like to start as a play-by-play. But you guys mentioned an
It's
analyst.
so hard.
Yeah. Yeah. The energy that you need to actually be a play-by-play commentator is totally different level. You have to carry the tone of the whole broadcaster.
Yeah.
Another problem with play-by-play is I often find myself enjoying just watching the game. I just stop talking and I just watch the game. So I cannot be play-by-play.
Oh, right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I started play-by-play, it was really hard. And then I realized analyst is really much more relaxed for, although you do need to study to be an analyst. Okay, next let's go for some questions outside of esports. Favorite superhero?
Wolverine.
Spider-Man.
Okay, next. Favorite board or card game?
Scrabble.
I'm surprised. Okay.
Lumalabas yung edad ko. But yeah, we play that all the time. It's either Scrabble or Boggle.
Okay.
Right. It's chess by far for me. So chess is my
chess.
Okay. Sport, yeah.
I'm shocked because I was expecting like werewolf or the other board games that most of the employees of Goliath would play. But okay.
I actually play chess in here. I actually taught some people there to play chess. So.
Okay, next. Favorite Netflix show?
All the CW shows.
All the CW shows. Ah, okay.
Arrowverse. Yep.
Arrowverse, yeah. Ren?
Right now, I don't know. I haven't been watching lately. What did I finish lately? The Queen's Gambit recently.
Queen's Gambit.
I just can't get anything right now.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, next. Favorite wrestling superstar?
It's gotta be The Rock.
The Rock. Nice.
It's Shawn Michaels for me.
Oh, okay.
Sexy boy.
Those two have never met, but fans would actually say they should have fought in a WrestleMania match. Okay, next. K-pop or anime?
Anime.
Anime. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. What is your all-time favorite Filipino esports moment?
Oh, for me, it's actually the SEA Games. The totality of it. That really put a lot of things on the map. Even our guys in Goliath, it was suddenly such a proud moment for their parents to see their kids on TV doing something for the country. And that's huge. Even until now, it still brings chills to everybody's bones whenever they go back to that.
All right, Ren?
I would say TNC's win against OG, but I had to second Ralph as well. I remember myself trying so hard not to cry, and it was a hard situation for us because I was the head referee for the whole esports competition, and I cannot openly cheer for the Philippine team because it's inappropriate behavior for a referee, right? So I have to keep everything inside. But that was such a proud moment, especially when we came back on the Dota 2 match, as well as our underdog win on ML.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Miracle of TI6 will always be one of the most iconic moments in Philippine esports history. All right, there we go. Crunch time is over, and that wraps everything up. But of course, before we end everything abruptly, our fellow gold diggers, as well as our guests, are going to share their final messages as well as their thoughts. So, Simone, Relly, and Robbie, you guys begin. What do we have in store in the succeeding weeks? Go.
So, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot as much as we did. Thanks to Ren Vitug and Ralph Aligada. I just want to say, Ren, you can cry here if you want. Okay, this is also an avenue for crying, so you can. Again, thank you, and do catch us again next Saturday at 8 p.m. where we have a special episode. It's going to be a special tribute to Rico Navarro. A sports personality, athletic director in Cebu who passed away recently. So please tune in and share some good stories about Coach Rico, Sir Rico. Sim?
Thanks, Ralph. Ren and Ralph, thanks again for joining us tonight and for digging with us and for giving us a crash course on esports. We wish you and the Philippine esports community all the best. And again, thanks for joining us, teammates. We hope you could share with us on Facebook your thoughts and what you learned from this episode and tag the Gold Diggers PH. Or you could simply share our posts or comment on our video uploads on Facebook and YouTube. We'd really love to hear from you guys. And thank you also to everyone who has followed us on our Facebook page and subscribed to our YouTube channel. If you haven't liked or followed us, we hope you can click that button and continue to dig with us. RDV?
Thanks, Sim. So again, lots of thanks to you, Ren and Ralph, for educating us on esports. And it's certainly something that we need to pay attention to, especially the values that we can pick up from its journey here in the country. So thanks to both of you guys. So teammates, we apologize for going over time, but the conversation was so great. And as Sim said, we were picking up so much that it is practically a 101, especially for me. So once again, we hope we continue to help out our fellow Filipinos affected by not just this pandemic, but by also the recent typhoons that have hit us in the past 3 weeks. So head on over to our Facebook page to find out how you can help our passion project, Pitch and PH. Or you can head on over to Rock Ed Relief, which is handled by Miss Gang Badoy Kapati, on their Facebook page to see how you can help out in their multiple initiatives that they're doing for our fellow Filipinos. So over to Ren first before we go over to Ralph. So Ren?
Yeah, thank you for having us here. Thank you for your kind words. Riels, thank you. I know I can cry here. Even Rob labeled this as kindred spirit earlier on, so that's new for us, so we'll take it. Thank you for this platform. You guys have been very excellent. Sobrang galing. So I hope this is something that can be helpful to a lot of people. If I have parting messages for the people listening, I think one thing that they can take advantage of is it's relatively very easy to reach people in the esports industry. So if you have questions, it should be easy to find people that you want to get, and then maybe you can take your shot and ask them directly. There's nothing to lose for you there, and it's an opportunity that you should take if you can.
Okay, guess it's my turn to say goodbye. But before I say goodbye, thanks to everyone from the Gold Diggers. You guys have been great. Thanks for giving us this platform to discuss, about our experiences, our thoughts, how we want to move things forward, and really everything that I want to say can be summed up in the next couple of words, which is number one, be kind. The world could use a lot more kindness nowadays. Also, be smart. Don't be stupid. Think before you click. And then finally, I guess we can turn this over to Carlos to close the show.
All right, so that wraps everything up. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, my name is Carlos Pineda, aka Wonderdrift, and this is Gold Diggers! Remember to dream, dig in, and win, not only in terms of playing games or achieving that desired rank, but also in life. See you next time in our next episode. Oh, wow, I'm still at the top of the leaderboards even after an hour and 40 minutes of podcasting. All right, let's carry on.
And just kill after kill for wings. It's insanely hard and Fnatic they just don't know what to do and how to deal with this kind of play stuff.
Team Liquid, they are on the ropes right now. Now is the time to run for the BKB. That's it, that's game.
We're about to do this at the biggest stage in Philippine esports history. Make some noise for the Asia Arena.
One v one in the tree line. Who's going to come out on top with the right leg? They'll get it! Double kill for the Potato Man!
Highlight is going to be duped up, but everything's all set up for Puppy to come in for the Echo Slam, and they're just planning to wipe E home if possible. There it is. You can't stop Secret. It'll end on a good old 3-2-2 for game number one.
To go back
will fly forward and Ramsey's after life. He goes to the back for the BKBs. It's the trigger. Ramsey's caught the black hole. Backed up. The black hole. A huge steal. A follow-up stop. They're going to lose everything. The Rabbit from Universe tries to scrape off mate. The story of the Aussie. Secret. Maybe they've got this. But no. Here comes the Musket.
He's found two, he's found three. Four dead on the side of Empire, and Kinga is going to fall as well.
On the back of that PL, aiming with the sun profile. Be careful! The Lord Drew got nailed! They can't see him, they can't attack him. Beastgrip actually dragging Kuro out of the black hole. He'll go down, the Fisher is there. Shadowfield survives to the Rabbits. And the gun! Concoction stun, can they find it? But DJ, it doesn't matter. Wings will take it.
All my life I've barely spoken. Your words have been so broken. I've been under your hypnosis until you see no motion. On your knees, show your devotion. My skin is black with opus. Are you with me now? Said, are you with me now? But till I just look around. Are you with me now? Are you with me now? Are you with me now? Said, are you with me now? Ain't felt this good in a while. They want us to sing it down.